and welcome to the San Jordi Book Festival. I'm very happy to be here today to introduce French author Laurent Gounelle. Laurent is an internationally renowned and best-selling author whose books have been translated into 40 languages. He's a personal development specialist who trained in humanities at NLP University in Santa Cruz, California. His novels express his passion for philosophy, psychology, and personal development. A specialist in humanities, he was educated in both France and the United States and has spent many years traveling the world to meet people who have shed light on humankind's most fundamental question: how to be fulfilled in life. Laurent's latest work in English is Alice Asks the Big Questions, published by Little Brown & Co. in February. His previous works include The Man Who Risked It All, Hay House Visions, and The Man Who Wanted to Be Happy, Random House. His most recent novel, Je te promets la liberté, has just come out in French in the Livre de Poche. I'm also particularly pleased and honored to be interviewing Laurent Gounelle today for many reasons. As someone who has translated works by dead authors, Maupassant, Nemirovsky, Camus, it was a real pleasure for me to work with a living author, especially one as genuinely kind and interesting as Laurent. I had the privilege of meeting him in Paris a few years ago when I had first begun the translation of his novel, Alice Asks the Big Questions. We spent several hours discussing writing, translation, and our own experiences before I attended a public interview he was giving in Paris. Nearly 200 people were there, all obviously huge fans, and it was a fascinating event. So, Laurent, thank you very, very much for agreeing to do this interview.
Well, I'm very happy to be here with you.
Thank you. So, Laurent, you're a French writer. So how do you explain the success of your books throughout the world in countries as different as Argentina and South Korea?
Oh. Well, the stories I tell contain, we could say, philosophical messages that help people live better lives. The culture that comes from any country corresponds to a rather superficial element within each of us. Fundamentally, every human being on this earth shares the same kinds of issues about fear, anger, or self-image. And I guess this is why the messages woven into my stories are universal.
Yes, I read some of your novels, and the messages they're subtly done, but they do come across very clearly. Why do you choose to write in the form of novels if you're interested in all these other types of areas?
Yeah, I believe in the power of metaphors. When you read my novels, you project yourself into the characters by stepping into their shoes, you identify with them, and by reading their stories, you find yourself experiencing things that could have happened in your own life. So you learn through these characters what you would like to learn in real life. In this sense, novels are more powerful than self-help guides because my messages speak directly to the unconscious mind.
Yes, I agree. After reading a few of your novels, it seems obvious to me that you're more interested in spirituality than in any particular organized religion. Would you say this is a fair comment?
Yeah, well, when you're interested, let's say, in philosophy, it's because you're trying to answer the fundamental question, how can I live my life in the best way possible? And it wouldn't occur to you to only read the words of just one philosopher, would it? So when you're interested in spirituality, you try to answer the question, What is the meaning of my life? From that point of view, why would you stop searching for answers from only one religion?
Yes, I see your point. And in the novel, the new novel, Alice Asks the Big Questions, you show links between Eastern and Western religions. How did you first become interested in these?
It all began with an intuition. I had the feeling that all these religions shared the same message, despite the differences that everyone sees. When you enter a Christian church or Buddhist or Hindu temple, what comes to mind immediately? Differences. Your eyes and ears notice differences. Why? Because the rituals are different, the sermons are different, the prayers are different. But I had the feeling that behind these differences, I could find a unique message if I could dig more deeply into the original text. So that's what I did, and this is what I discovered. With very different words, all religions invite you to liberate yourself from your ego.
Yes, it's very obvious in the novel that the ego plays a large part. Could
Yeah.
you give us your definition of the ego?
Well, if I ask you this simple question, who are you? I bet it would be a little difficult and maybe confusing to really answer it. I mean, you could say, I am Sandra Smith, and it's true, but your parents could have given you another name. And the question is, would you have been a different person? You might also try to define yourself through your job, saying I'm a translator or professor or whatever. And yes, I believe that's also true, but you could have chosen another job. Does it mean you would have been someone else? You may define yourself through your qualities, saying, for example, I'm a very kind person, I'm imaginative, or serious, or whatever. Yes, and maybe your neighbor has the same qualities. Does it mean you're both the same person? So you see, it's difficult to know who we are, and the thing is that the less we know it, the more we want to know to feel alive. So we tend to find some positive and rewarding images or roles defining ourselves and then try to stick to them. For example, if you identify with your professional role, you're trying to exist for your job, to be seen as a valuable person for your job, and maybe you tend to adopt attitudes and to behave in such a way that people see the professional in you. Today I'm a writer, and I could be tempted to identify myself through my job. If that were the case, I would try to stick to that role. For example, I try to speak like a writer, to dress like a writer, to adopt a writer's attitude. But the more I did that, and the more I would enclose myself in a representation of myself that takes me away from who I am beyond my job. Because who I am goes far beyond what I'm doing professionally. Who you are goes far beyond what you're doing professionally. You could also identify yourself with your beauty. This often happens to good-looking people who are attempting to exist through their physical appearance, and as if you were worth your beauty, while your beauty is just an attribute. But usually it's not conscious. All these things are not conscious, but there's a way to know if you identify yourself through your physical appearance. If that's the case for you, then you feel less worthy in the presence of more beautiful or handsome people. And consciously, you fear that this person exists more than you. In reality, you're worth much more than your beauty. What else? You can also cling on to your intelligence, culture, or thoughts. And if so, without realizing it, you're trying to exist through your words. And in that case, when someone contradicts you, you feel devalued, as if you are being attacked personally, while someone has simply expressed that they disagree with your ideas. You can also cling on to your possessions and develop the feeling that our worth is a product of the things we own, you know, a car, a house, a phone, or handbag, whatever. And in that case, you feel devalued when someone else possesses a nicer car, a more beautiful house, a better phone, or more expensive handbag. You see, I think we are not our profession or our physical appearance or our culture or our possessions. And the problem with all these false representations that we cling on to try to feel alive, especially in the eyes of other people, is that they distance us from who we really are, you know, from our true selves. We may believe that they make us valued, but in that case, sooner or later, we start to feel that we are not loved for ourselves, but for the things we have highlighted about ourselves, you know, the images we have projected to others. And these false representations come from our ego. The ego is that part of us that wants to prove that we exist independently from others, the thing that pushes us to want to be different and better than others.
So you see that as a problem. Why? Can you explain a little bit more about why you see the ego as such a problem?
Well, first of all, there's no harm in it. I mean, speaking in absolute terms, you know, you shouldn't feel guilty about having an ego. But just keep in mind the ego is the thing that makes us unhappy because it cuts us off from other people when it is human nature to connect with other people. And it is by fully living this connection, especially through our relationships with others, that we are truly happy.
Well, this new novel also shows a great deal of interest in psychology.
Yeah.
How did you get interested in that subject? And why do you think it's so important?
Well, to free yourself from your ego in order to be truly happy, you must first, and this is kind of a paradox, you must first develop a healthy ego. In short, you have to learn how to love yourself. I mean, truly love yourself, to internalize the idea that you're a good person, someone of great worth, independent of what you do, what you succeed or in or fail in, independent of your physical appearance and all the rest. Because it is narcissistic wounds that reinforce our ego. Learning to love yourselves means you must free yourself from the beliefs that limit your image of yourself. That means working on your psychology. And such work is necessary before you can make any progress on a spiritual level. And unless you do this, any spiritual progress will lead you to bury your problems, which will hinder your development.
Well, you've talked about what we are not. But what about what we are?
Well, let me say this. What happens to us when we grow older? We lose our looks, a good part of our neurons, well, at least some of them, and therefore part of our mental abilities. We lose our jobs once we retire, and our body progressively deteriorates, right? So we lose many of our illusions too. And some people also manage to lose their ego in the final moments of their lives. So what's left? What we really are and have been from the very beginning, our souls. Scientists are currently working to try to demonstrate that our consciousness, our soul, is not just the product of our brain, but it exists independently of our brain. And if that is the case, then what does the soul consist of? Every spiritual theory proposes its own response, you know, but we can't prove anything in that domain. So I personally tend to think that our consciousness might be a kind of a fragment of a collective consciousness that is incarnated in the body while a human being is alive. but that will continue to exist beyond that point, which would be very exciting. Don't you think so?
Yes, I think that'd be amazing. Well, Laurent, I can't thank you enough for sharing your time and insights with us. And I hope we get to meet again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sandra.
Bye-bye.
Bye.